The medal that would not obey. Donald Trump's latest brush with the Nobel Peace Prize reveals not a misunderstanding of rules, but a misunderstanding of power itself. There are many ways for a presidency to be remembered. Some are chiseled into marble and revisited by schoolchildren with notebooks and mild confusion. Others survive as footnotes, glanced at briefly before the reader moves on. A few, however, dissolve into something stranger, a form of political theater so earnest in its intent, so careless in its execution, that it collapses into farce. Donald Trump's latest encounter with the Nobel Peace Prize belongs firmly to this final category, on a bright Thursday in mid-January. Inside the ceremonial geometry of the White House, the American president staged what aides described as a moment of historical correction. Beneath chandeliers heavy with inherited authority, and before the flags of a republic that prides itself on permanence, Mr. Trump accepted a gold medal and a diploma from Maria Corina Machado, Venezuela's opposition leader and the official recipient of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Cameras clicked. Statements were issued. Social media accounts warmed into synchronized admiration. The message, carefully choreographed and instantly amplified, was uncomplicated. History, having briefly lost its way, had now been nudged back onto the correct path. It had not. Within hours the Norwegian Nobel Committee, an institution famous for its glacial silence and monk-like aversion to drama, issued a statement of almost surgical restraint. Mr. Trump, it explained, was not now, nor had he ever been, a Nobel laureate. A medal could change hands. A diploma might be gifted. History, however, could not be transferred like a condominium deed in Palm Beach. The tone was not angry. It was worse. It was educational. A Nobel Prize, the committee reminded the world, is not a transferable asset. It cannot be shared, sold, donated, inherited or re-gifted. It cannot be acquired through enthusiasm or appropriated through gratitude. It cannot be seized by executive order or validated by applause. Once awarded, it belongs forever to the individual named at the moment of decision. Even theft, the committee added with Nordic composure, would not alter the official record. The statement read less like a rebuke than a patient lecture delivered to someone suspected of not listening. For Mr. Trump, who has spent much of his political life insisting that reality responds best to volume and confidence, this was an unfamiliar sensation. It was not a defeat. It was something more unsettling: irrelevance, the longing for validation. Mr. Trump's fascination with the Nobel Peace Prize is neither new nor subtle. For years he has spoken of it not as an honor conferred by others, but as a clerical oversight awaiting correction. Barack Obama, he has often complained, received the prize for nothing, while he himself, having allegedly ended wars by the handful, was ignored by a committee blinded by ideology or malice or both. In Mr. Trump's mental arithmetic, diplomacy is a scoreboard. If bombs stop falling somewhere, temporarily, coincidentally, or for reasons entirely unrelated to Washington, credit is due. That peace might be fragile, coerced, incomplete or largely imaginary is beside the point. The headline matters. The trophy matters more. Over the past year this yearning hardened into obsession. The president repeatedly claimed to have ended 8 wars, a number that rose and fell depending on the enthusiasm of the rally or the length of the applause. Evidence was rarely provided. Precision was unnecessary. The claim was not designed to be tested. It was designed to be felt. Facts, after all, are cumbersome things. Feelings travel faster. The Nobel Committee, however, remained stubbornly immune to atmosphere. It does not respond to vibes. It does not trend. It does not correct itself under pressure from cable television. It meets, deliberates, votes and then retreats once more into dignified obscurity. In October it announced that the 2025 Peace Prize would go not to Mr. Trump, but to Ms. Machado, for her leadership of Venezuela's democratic opposition and her efforts to expose electoral fraud under Nicolas Maduro's regime. The choice was defensible, morally legible and profoundly inconvenient for the occupant of the Oval Office. Ms. Machado was then in hiding. She had spent months moving between safe houses, pursued by a government that understood the danger of symbolism. When she eventually undertook a perilous journey out of Venezuela to receive the prize in Oslo, the narrative wrote itself: moral courage confronting entrenched power. It was not a story in which Mr. Trump featured. Regime change, rebranded. That omission did not last. 2 weeks before the White House ceremony, American military action resulted in the arrest of Mr. Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, bringing to an abrupt end a quarter-century of Chavista rule. The operation was swift, decisive, and celebrated in Washington with minimal discussion of legality. Regime change, a phrase once considered impolite in respectable policy circles, returned under a more hygienic label: transition management. The White House framed the operation as humanitarian necessity. Critics called it unilateral intervention. Lawyers asked awkward questions that went unanswered. The administration, buoyed by the speed of the collapse, preferred celebration to reflection. In the aftermath, Ms. Machado traveled to Washington. Officially, the meeting concerned Venezuela's political future. Unofficially, it drifted rapidly toward Mr. Trump's personal one. At some point during the encounter, Ms. Machado announced that she would give her Nobel Peace Prize to the American president, in gratitude for his role in removing Mr. Maduro. Whether this was an act of sincere loyalty, political calculation, or strategic desperation is difficult to say. In post-authoritarian landscapes, gratitude tends to be expressed quickly, before circumstances have time to change. The White House treated the moment as definitive. Photographs were posted. Statements were drafted. Mr. Trump declared himself honored to receive the prize for the work I have done to bring peace. In another political system, this might have passed as symbolism. In the Trumpian universe, symbolism is not metaphor. It is ownership. That the Nobel Committee might object appears not to have occurred to anyone present. Institutions versus personality. The committee's response therefore landed with particular force. It did not challenge Mr. Trump's claims of peacemaking. It did not comment on Venezuela, intervention, or the ethics of military coercion. It did something far more devastating: it explained the rules. This episode illuminates a deeper misunderstanding at the heart of Mr. Trump's worldview. Power, to him, is personal. Institutions exist only insofar as they validate the individual who dominates them. When they comply, they are brilliant. When they resist, they are corrupt, biased, or illegitimate. The Nobel Committee represents the opposite philosophy. It is maddeningly procedural. Decisions are slow. Explanations are sparse. Authority derives not from charisma but from continuity. The prize matters precisely because it cannot be bent to the will of the powerful. Its statement, brief and bloodless, was therefore lethal. It treated Mr. Trump not as a rival, nor even as a transgressor, but as someone who had misunderstood gravity. You may possess the object, it implied. You do not possess the meaning. For a president who measures success in applause, this was humiliation of the quietest and most enduring kind. The irony of peace by force. There is also a deeper contradiction at the heart of the claim itself. The Nobel Peace Prize has always wrestled with paradox. It has been awarded to war makers and pacifists, to realists and dreamers, sometimes aspirationally, in the hope that recipients would grow into it. But even by its elastic standards, peace achieved through unilateral military intervention sits uneasily. Mr. Trump's logic is simple: removing a dictator creates peace. The committee's logic is narrower and less theatrical. Peace is not merely the absence of tyranny, but the presence of legitimacy, consent, and institutional stability. Venezuela currently enjoys none of these. Following Mr. Maduro's arrest, Mr. Trump announced that the United States would run the country during a transition period. Simultaneously, inside Caracas, Delcy Rodriguez, Mr. Maduro's longtime vice president, was sworn in as interim leader. The arrangement manages to be both revolutionary and unchanged at once. Most conspicuously, neither Washington nor Caracas has offered a clear timeline for elections, despite the Venezuelan constitution requiring a presidential vote within 30 days of a permanent vacancy. Silence has replaced dictatorship. This is not quite the same thing as democracy. If peace is measured not by explosions avoided but by institutions built, Venezuela's future remains unresolved. The Nobel Committee, in its austere phrasing, appeared to gesture precisely toward this distinction. The prize, it noted, is awarded based on contributions up to the moment of decision. It does not comment on what follows. Translated from Scandinavian understatement, this amounts to, history will judge later, a prize that resists appropriation. Mr. Trump's frustration is understandable, if not sympathetic. In his political universe, loyalty is transactional. Ms. Machado expressed gratitude. She offered the highest honor she possessed. Why should that not suffice? Because the Nobel Peace Prize is not hers to give. The committee's clarification that even possession of the physical medal does not confer laureate status was particularly cruel. One can easily imagine the gold disc resting somewhere in the White House, gleaming uselessly, a prop without authority. Few objects could better symbolize the limits of spectacle. In an age when influence is bought, borrowed or branded, the Nobel Prize remains stubbornly analog. It does not update. It does not apologize. It does not correct itself in response to trending outrage. That obstinacy is precisely why it still matters. The ego problem. For Mr. Trump, the incident cuts deeper than procedural embarrassment. It touches the architecture of his self-image. He does not merely wish to be powerful, he wishes to be recognized as virtuous. The Nobel Prize, in his imagination, would complete the transformation from disruptor to redeemer. Without it, his narrative remains incomplete, hence the insistence. Hence the triumphalist posts. Hence the inability to accept that gratitude from a dependent ally is not the same as recognition from history. The committee's reminder that a Nobel Prize can never be revoked nor reassigned was almost unnecessarily pointed. It underlined permanence. Some things, it suggested gently, exist beyond negotiation. For a man accustomed to renegotiating everything, this may be the greatest insult of all. What the episode really reveals, taken alone, the affair might seem trivial. A ceremonial misunderstanding. A clash of etiquette and ego. In fact, it reveals something larger about modern power. Mr. Trump embodies a world in which legitimacy flows upward from dominance, charisma and force. The Nobel Committee represents a world in which legitimacy flows downward from rules, memory, and institutional continuity. These worlds increasingly speak different languages. One sees medals as proof. The other sees records as reality. One believes recognition can be compelled. The other believes it must be earned and archived. That they collided over a piece of gold is entirely fitting. Peace without patience. The most unsettling element of the story is not the president's wounded pride, but the fragility of what has replaced Mr. Maduro's rule. Peace imposed quickly, without political architecture, tends to decay just as fast. If Venezuela's transition falters, if elections are postponed, if authority remains opaque, today's liberation risks becoming tomorrow's occupation in all but name. In that scenario, the Nobel Committee's refusal will appear not pedantic, but prophetic. Peace is not a moment. It is a process. It cannot be handed over during a photo opportunity. The medal stays silent. Somewhere, perhaps, the medal now sits in a display case. It shines. It weighs something. It looks convincing, but it says nothing. History, unlike gold, does not reflect light. It absorbs time, and time, as the Nobel Committee so dryly reminded the world, is not transferable. In the end, Mr. Trump did receive something from this episode, though not what he wanted. He received a lesson in the limits of performance politics. A reminder that not every institution can be conquered by confidence alone. For a president who believes reality bends to declaration, the Nobel Committee offered a rare and uncomfortable truth. You may take the medal, you cannot take the meaning, and that, for an ego built on applause, may be the harshest verdict of all.